Welcome back to the Bet Golf DFS show here at BetSportsGolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined today, first up of our trio. You know him as PGA Splits 101 on Twitter, or the scientist called out on live television. It is none other than Ron Kloss. Ron, very busy week for you, I know. How's it going?
Yeah, going well. This week is intriguing on so many levels. Of course, it's the second major of the year, but we've got 99 of the top 100 players in the world on this beast of a course that apparently doesn't have a single true birdie hole. So, we have potential weather issues. We have Taylor Gooch potentially winning his first major. So it's going to be an interesting week.
Of course, that man laughing in the background is the host of the Back Nine Bets podcast, the Model Maniac on Twitter, none other than Byron Lindeque. Byron, how are you feeling ahead of the major?
I'm tired. It's been a busy week. It's one of these PGA Championship weeks. You got lots of podcasts, lots of articles, all that jazz, but it's a fun week to behold. And once it's all behind us, I think it's going to be some fun. It's good to watch guys who get paid millions and millions of dollars to make birdies actually just suck at golf a little bit, So I'm all for it this week. Let the bogeys ensue and let's see who wins.
They are all one of us this week because they are embarking on Oak Hill Country Club with disastrous 3 to 4 inch rough. We've all seen Dan Rappaport's video where he drops a ball into the rough and it just disappears. You can't find it anymore. And as you noted in your course preview, Ron, free for everyone on the site, fairways and bunkers that force 55% of approach shots to not only occur from a lengthy 175 yards out, but then be landed on the tour's 4 smallest greens. And so where does your lineup construction, where do you begin in building lineups with this course this week, Ron?
So you've kind of, everybody's heard the quotes from the players on the course being interviewed. And, it pretty much everything starts with, you have to keep your ball in the fairway. The fairways are narrow. They've done, Andrew Green, of course, did this renovation where so many trees are taken out and the fairway appears more wide open, but the fairways are just as narrow as they've ever been. And so, like you said, you have this rough that's not really super long, but it's just really thick, here in the Northeast where, just coming out of spring, it's very dense. Players are talking about just, if you're in certain spots, you're just going to have to hack it out. Especially if you're 175 plus away, which kind of we're looking at probably about 55% of approach shots are going to be from that distance. And so it's going to be a challenge just, getting the ball onto the green and there's going to be a lot of scrambling for par. And so for me, I'm just kind of starting with who's, obviously with kind of another thing I read is, the rough is kind of the same, whether you're 2 feet off the fairway or you're 20 feet or 20 yards wide of the fairway. So, you have kind of different ways you can look at it. Do you take bombers who, if they're pushing the ball up closer to the hole, that's definitely an advantage because they're taking a shorter club in. But now I'm reading that, the fairways are much firmer than expected. And so you have shorter hitters kind of in play now who, they can kind of push the ball up the fairway. They may have, just much of an advantage. So, for me, it's all about, finding the fairway. You don't want to play from the rough. And then, these greens are very small, 4,500 square feet on average. The bunkers are absolutely treacherous. So just kind of around the green play is going to be important as well. And so just kind of like always in majors, looking for that all-around golfer who has every club in the bag and who has shown success in the past on similar tough scoring courses.
Byron, any leftover notes for you to parse from as you build your lineups?
No, if I were to say anything, it would be my second shot out of the rough, essentially what we'll be seeing a lot of this week. Just hacking it out, keep on going down, scramble your face off, 5 to 15 feet on bank grass putting. Going to see a lot of those putts for par this week. So pretty simple stuff. Fun game theory with the off the tee stuff we can discuss there.
And speaking of game theory, I want to come right back to you and ask you both if there are any big picture takeaways that you've already noticed when building lineups. Like, remember for the Masters, I think one of the biggest picture takeaways was how egregiously or underpriced the entire LIV crew was, understanding how volatile that situation was since they had basically gone off, partied for a little bit, and then were coming back with their buddies to play in competitive golf. And then basically at those decreased salaries, a majority of them did splendid. including, of course, Brooks, who made it to the final group on that last day. Any big picture takeaways you're seeing? Maybe not so much with LIV guys, but other items, Byron, for this salaried field?
Nothing too crazy. I think we've seen some minor overreactions to some of the LIV guys that performed well. Some guys got, like Patrick Reed and Brooks Koepka, shot the same score at the Masters, and there's like a $2,000 something $100 difference between their two prices. So I'm not sure why one got the treatment and the other didn't. But hey, there's Brooks sitting in the 10Ks and Patrick Reed sitting in the 7Ks. So interesting stuff there. The 9K range is just loaded. I think if you want to play balance builds this week, I think you're in absolutely good shape. I think there's a lot of really chalky guys in that range that we're going to have to figure out.
Any other final thoughts for you, Ron, before we dive into players?
Yeah, so when we're going to see scoring conditions, as tough as it is this week, I think as far as guys who are bad putters, I think you can really look at some of these guys like a Gary Woodland who, when you're not forced to make putts on every hole as far as birdie putts, and, he's kind of, his ball striking has been so good lately. And so that's kind of where my focus is, just ball striking. And just to go to the LIV topic, like I'll say this, the Masters performance of some of these guys, speaking of, again, Patrick Reed, Koepka, it kind of brought me back to them. And so I'm very much more open to playing those guys this week.
And some of their salaries have increased, as you mentioned, Byron. As we get into this top tier of players, Brooks Koepka is 10-1 this time around, as opposed to his lowly salary at the Masters, coming off that win in Orlando at the time as well. But at the top, of course, it's a two-man race over 11K between Jon Rahm and Scottie Scheffler. And then we dip down to Rory at 10-7 and Morikawa at 10-3. So, Ron, I'll let you kick it off with how you are strategizing around this tier.
Yeah, so coming into this major, obviously everyone knows how dominant Scheffler and Rahm have been over the past year. I think it's just common sense, at least from a betting perspective for sure, to have one on your outright card just because, how good they've been. But even from a DFS perspective, I mean, both of these guys could have been priced so much higher. You do have that next tier below where, guys like Schauffele and Cantlay are very impressive lately, picking up steam. But for me, I'm going to try to have one of these top two in a lot of lineups. It was an internal debate over, which one is best. I think they're both so equal in so many ways. I kind of slightly side with Scheffler. When you look at the past year, Data Golf has a true strokes gained number on there, which kind of weighs for strength of field. And when you look at that, Scheffler has gained 2.4 strokes tee to green per round compared to Rahm's 1.8. So that's a pretty sizable edge. And especially on a course like this where putting, in my opinion at least, is somewhat de-emphasized. Scheffler has had his struggles on the greens. And so, that, and along with Scheffler, and I know Rahm has a similar streak going, but Scheffler's level of consistency might be unmatched. When you look at his 11 last events, he has a top 12 finish in every single one of them. So 11 straight events, top 12, just every single week. And again, when you look at kind of my model for this week, I have a core 4 metric, basically try to boil it down to the top 4 stats. And, Scheffler does outpace Rahm in both total driving and strokes gain approach. And so, he's such an intense competitor. And, I think there's no doubt he's going to be in the mix. Both the guys probably will be come Sunday.
Byron, what about you at the top?
I think we've got a difference right off the bat here, Ron. I don't think I'm leaning on ball strikers as much as you. I think you have to have a very solid all-round game. And like I mentioned earlier, 5 to 15 feet is essential this week. I think making those par putts from these bunkers that I don't think, the guys have mentioned that these balls are landing up in the bunkers without any sort of upslope help. They're going to be at the bottom of the basin of the bunkers, which means that the average par-saving putts is going to be longer than usual. These bunkers are so far beneath the surface of the putting green, the chipping areas. Like the ability to hit greens from this rough is going to be a nightmare. I think you have to have a good short game this week, and Scottie is kind of lacking in that area. I think Jon Rahm has got all 4 of those bases covered, whereas Scottie's pretty much the best off the tee and on approach, basically. But the bunker play has been really bad for Scottie, and the putting has been really bad. So I'm I sold my Scotty Rainmakers. I'm not playing him in DFS this week. It's a full fade for me for Scotty, especially at this price. I'm going with Rahm instead.
Ron, is there someone at the top here where you know you won't have much of in tournaments? Someone, for instance, like a Rory McIlroy, who has struggled over the last month. Not only has putting been a disaster, but man, 2 missed cuts in his last 4 tournaments just for recency bias. That T47 at the Wells Fargo when it could have been so much better. Anyone you're thinking about just fading altogether here?
Yeah, so not as much maybe fading altogether, but definitely fading both McIlroy and Colin Morikawa. Just with Rory, everybody saw his press conference yesterday. Some people say that's a good thing that he's kind of ticked off. Maybe it's a bad thing that his head's just not on the right spot still. But, just after seeing him at the Masters, and again, kind of reports that he's really working on things with his swing still. And, this is definitely not a course where you want to come in, working on stuff. So, just for that reason, I do think he's a great course fit. Obviously, he's probably played here more than anybody else at this course. So I don't think he's a bad play, but I just think Rahm and Scheffler are so high above him. And even if you just dip down to Schauffele and Cantlay, I think those two are much, much better plays than Rory this week. Morikawa, of course, he's been so great at majors in his young career. But I just think, I don't know, just something about him, like Byron said, around the green play is very important this week. And so with these smaller greens, of course, if he gets on a ball striking tear, but I just think overall his short game is kind of that one weakness that's going to really be huge this weekend. At 10,300, I just can't play him this week that much.
And I know, Byron, we did a Rainmaker show together on Monday night with Peter Jennings, and he also mentioned that especially when trying to target players, not just for this week, but over the next 2 majors, since the next one on June 15th, Morikawa does seem like a player to fade in the short term.
Correct. I think that is the common theme here, but I have some stats for you about Colin Morikawa's short game in majors. His ball striking numbers remain pretty constant. He loses a bit. He's the world #1 ball approach player. So he's 8th in strokes gained in majors on approach. But when you go over to short game, he is 101st around the greens baseline. Then it's 47th in strokes gained in this field in around the green play. Then you go to 90th strokes gained baseline putting, and then 49th in majors. So he has been actually gaining around the greens in the last few majors too. He played, he just steps it up at majors for some reason, or maybe the courses promote easier around the green play and putting. Whatever the situation is, the stats for his short game are drastically improved at majors. And we know he's an elite ball striker. He's going to find these fairways like crazy. I'm going to be playing a little bit of Colin this week.
And finally, Ron, before we move on from this one, just curious, knowing that both are good answers, and I know you said you lean Scheffler in tournaments, do you have a hard selection on who would be the better pick in 50-50 in cash games, considering that you can't fit both unless I'm missing something?
I mean, man, I think those two guys are so even. I mean, you could say maybe Rahm just with Scheffler's putting issues. And of course, you want a guy who's going to be, you do want a guy who's a consistent putter. So I would maybe lean Rahm in cash type plays for sure.
Okay, Byron, I will come to you to start the next tier because you already mentioned potentially moving on from that top list of 5 players and building around some key golfers in the 9K range between Xander Schauffele, 9.9, picking up steam late in the week, of course. Patrick Cantlay, 9.7. Jordan Spieth coming off his injury, 9.6. Tony Finau, 9.5. Justin Thomas, 9.4. The list goes on and on, all the way down to Sung JM at 9K flat. So your thoughts?
Yeah. Patrick Cantlay is my guy in this range. I'll be playing the most of him in the 9Ks. Love what he's been up to off the tee. I love his baseline off the tee numbers. I love the fact that he is crazy good on bent grass greens. He's the best in the field over a long sample size on bent. His bogey avoidance rate's the best in the field, and his par 5 scoring is sensational too. I think that's also the best in the field for my rankings. So 2 really important stats. And par 5 scoring, there's only 2 of them this week, but there's, I think, 4 par 4s that are 500 plus yards. Those are basically playing like par 5s. You're going to need those skill sets in order to conquer those holes. I love what he can get up to. He's really affordable. been playing great golf. His buddy Xander is going to be taking all the steam from him there, I think, on the ownership front, who I also like. I like Xander a lot. I don't mind him at all. And then Cameron Young. I'll sign me up for some Cameron Young this week at $9,200. This golf course, if you're talking about carry distance and ability to just get it way down there, no matter if you hit the fairway or not, Cameron Young's going to be your guy. He's back in New York. I know he's not from this exact area, but he says he feels very comfortable in New York, playing golf courses that he's, been around on many times. And I think he's had 2 bad events and we're kind of getting an ownership discount. So he's been very chalky lately, and it's nice to actually see his name with a little bit of a 1 around it now. So it's good stuff.
Your thoughts on the 9K range, Ron?
Yeah, so and I just to go back just really quick, I didn't mention much about Koepka, but just looking back and kind of what I did this week in one of my sheets is to kind of combine PGA event history with the US Open. And because I kind of think, especially with how tough it's going to play this week, this is almost like a US Open type course with how strong it is. And so just going back, looking at those 2 events since 2017 and Koepka, and just the number of top 5s that he has, and an average finishing position of 14th place, in what 11 events that he's been in from those 2, PGA Championship, US Opens. I just think something about the toughness of the course, just brings out the best in him. And so just seeing what he did at the Masters, it looks like he's just fully back, just his mindset, just kind of a winner take all thing. I don't think you can overlook him. But yeah, Schauffele's kind of my guy. We finished 2nd overall in my model for the week. And I think if you're not going to play Rahm or Scheffler, in a lineup, I think you almost have to take 2 guys from this 9K range just because the win equity is pretty high here. But no, Schauffele's been on a tear of late. He's got 3 straight top 10s, all in designated events. He's got consecutive, 4 straight top 15s in majors. He's gained a spectacular 24 strokes ball striking in his last 3 events. So, the biggest draw for me is just he's so excellent and consistent with every club in his bag. He doesn't have any specific weakness. And playing a strenuous course like Oak Hill, I think that's just going to be so huge. And then I'll drop down here a little bit to Tony Finau. Over the past few years, anybody who follows golf knows that, he's always had that potential to be one of the best players in the world, winning multiple majors. And, it appears he's finally kind of seeing the results catch up to his talent. And so, yes, they've been lesser events, the Mexico Open, other events, down in Mexico, but, 4 wins in his last 10 months. So he's going to kind of continue this journey here, trying to kind of get the major monkey off his back. And, he hasn't lost strokes in an event since March of 2022. So just in the level of consistency and very similar to Xander, he has this all around game. Length off the tee. He's got the touch around the greens. And again, on a course like this where you're not going to see many birdies, he does have that ceiling where he can go on a birdie streak, even on tough holes. And so I just think the combination of his ceiling and his high floor just make him a great overall selection this week.
We had the same discussion for the Masters around these 2 players in particular being in the mid to high 9Ks and perhaps not having win equity. But as you mentioned, Xander has not had it yet, but just knocking on the door with 3 consecutive top 4 finishes, including that 2 overall at the Wells Fargo. And then Finau, yes, again, you talked about it, a weaker field, but just to get that win in Mexico with Rahm coming in 2nd, it does seem like at least everything's fitting in well. So whether 9-5 is worth it if he doesn't win, I don't know. But yes, if he can just get that major bugaboo off his back, it does seem like a really good value, especially in this tier. We didn't hit on, though, really any of the lower 9K players, like your Justin Thomas, Cam Smith, Cameron Young, carry distance, obviously a very important stat at this course, given that the bunkers, it's so tough because they're usually laid out 300 to 310 yards out from the tee. So any thoughts on that lower 9,400 and on tier, Ron, before we move forward?
Yeah, I love Justin Thomas this week. I think, talking about his main weakness being the putter, Just him going to the aim point method, just watching him at the Wells Fargo, he did look much more comfortable. He did make more of the putts that he should have made. And so, that's kind of been his big thing where, he misses a lot of those, 5 to 15 footers that seemingly he shouldn't. And so, I think if we see that carry over, everybody knows how good he is, whether it's short game, off the tee, one of the best approach iron players in the world. So, and of course he is, two-time PGA winner. And so, with Bones Mackay in his bag and just, I just think, he's so elite in so many areas that, 9,400 to me. And I mean, I've got him coming in at right around 12, 13% right now. I think people might still be a little sour on him for, his recent performances, but, I think it's a great time to jump back on JT. And then I'll go down here to the very bottom. Sung J M, plays at the Wells Fargo. He flies to Korea, wins his country's or one of the main events in South Korea's, event there, and flies back this week. And so, the guy just grinds it out every single week, loves playing. I just think he's another great value here at 9K. Very consistent, solid when you're looking at off the tee. And so Sung J M would be my second favorite play in the lower 9K range.
Byron?
I don't know if I'm a big fan of Sung Jae's major performances, though. I love, he's grading out really well for me, too. I think there's a lot to like going into this event. His game fits a lot of it, but he just doesn't seem to get it done outside of Augusta. His major performances at Augusta are pretty solid, but everywhere else, it's a bit of a shambles. So I'm not necessarily all that thrilled about him. I am in on JT, though. Not a big fan of playing JT when he's chalk. I don't mind him at 13% this week. Like Ron said, you take a gamble on that upside with the putter kind of bouncing back a little bit, and the rest of his game is just ideal for this kind of a golf course. This guy can scramble his face off from any lie around the green, and hopefully that putter starts being a little more obedient going into the week. So lots of fun stuff to go from JT there. And then I think just having so much of Xander and Cantley in my lineups, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to Tony that much. He's just going to be a casualty of my player pool. Being saturated with those two boys at the top, but I don't mind, JT at all.
Let's move into the 8Ks, and this will probably have to be another split conversation between the top and bottom of the pricing, because at the top, following his win on Mother's Day, it is, of course, Jason Day leading the way, also leading the way in ownership at 8-9. Dustin Johnson, 8-8, coming off his big week and win for the LIV Tour. In Tulsa, Max Homa, 8-7. Hideki following a terrific performance last week as well at 8-6. Teal Hatton, 8-5. Matthew Fitzpatrick, 8-4. The list goes on, as you can see all the prices on the screen. So go ahead and get us started, Ron, at the top of this list here.
Yeah, so Jason Day, I did kind of like him coming in, just kind of riding the momentum. And then, if you haven't heard his press conference from this morning, where he basically said he is not playing the course at all. He got in a few hours of practice on the range and stuff like that. But, I just think that's such a disadvantage when, you haven't seen a course like this. And, just from a mental perspective, he's been through so much, and then he finally wins. And it just seems like he's the kind of player who might experience a letdown this week, just not even playing the course, out of the equation as well. So for me, this kind of starts, with Dustin Johnson. I just think his length off the tee here, I looked at, over the last, 5 years, going back to other courses that have very similar rough conditions to Oak Hill, with rough kind of in that 3 to 3.5 inch range and even higher. Who are the best players at proximity to the green when hitting out of the rough from at least 175 yards? And Dustin Johnson was by far and away the top player in that category. And so he's got the club head speed. If it does, if we get some rain and the course does play longer, he's got the carry distance. And so just, I think overall, he's kind of shown, coming off the victory on LIV, shown some signs of life lately. And so I think that's maybe one of the best plays on the board as far as values for 8,800. The next guy for me, I'm going to always come back to Hideki in these majors. He's second behind Brooks Koepka when you look at U.S. Opens combined with PGAs. Average finishing position is 19th place. Just so consistent, not missing any cuts. We had the neck concerns, and then he goes last week. does pretty well at the Byron Nelson. And so I think his game is in a pretty good area. And again, you're getting, in my opinion, a pretty good value on him at 8,600. So I do like Hideki. And then I'll take it down here to Matt Fitzpatrick at 8,400. But both him and Tyrrell Hatton right above him at 8,500. I'm going to have a lot of lineups with kind of a European theme in them. I think this course at Oak Hill reminds me of the BMW course in Europe, in England, where they play at Wentworth. And so I just think these guys, whether it's Hatton, Fitzpatrick, even when we get to Shane Lowry here, when you're talking tough scoring courses where par is a good score, cold, wet, rainy, I just think these conditions just fit Hatton and Fitzpatrick very well. And so I know they're kind of both of them edging upward in ownership a little bit, but I think those are really two quality plays and their form. I mean, Tyrrell Hatton is playing the best he ever has here in the United States, just quality finish after quality finish. Of course, Matt Fitzpatrick has proven he can get it done in majors, winning the U.S. Open. He just won a few weeks back at RBC Heritage. So I think these guys here in the middle are really good options. Just even if you're going for a balanced lineup, those two, Hatton and Fitzpatrick especially, should definitely be in your lineups.
Hatton, 5th in the last 6 months among this field, and that stat you mentioned, proximity to the hole from the rough, from 175 to 200 yards out, knowing that a majority of approach shots will come from that range. So a good stat to lean on. Also, what you gave out in your column on Bet4 Golf in combining the PGA Championship, U.S. Open courses since 2017, Matt Fitzpatrick has averaged the 14th most strokes gained among this field using that combination of courses. So combine that with also top 20 being in this field on putting on bent grass greens historically. He's a player I'm very high on in this mid 8K range. Byron, your thoughts on this tier?
Yeah, I love Hideki in this kind of a course. He's 6th in the field from good shots gained. So when you gain over half a stroke on approach from the rough, from outside 150 yards, that's going to be essential this week. I am a little concerned that his distance, I think, in order to preserve his flimsy neck, has been reduced quite drastically. I think he was out there nuking it at one point, and now he's 70th in distance this year. So a little concerning, but I think his rough play is just great, and he's a scrambler. He playing as well as he did at the Byron Nelson was really impressive, because he's not a guy that goes out and dominates his birdie fest. He's a course specialist for like these kind of events. And I think he'll thrive in the hard conditions, just like Matt Fitzpatrick. He leads the field in hard scoring for me, which is ideal. The driving distance is amazing for him, and the accuracy there is very good too. Bent grass putting, great stuff. My only concern with him is out of the bunkers. A little bit of a problem for him. He's actually a very substandard bunker player. We'll see what he can get up to, but the rest of his game is good enough to take him at $8,400. I am out on Tyrrell Hatton though. He's playing really good golf. I like what he's been up to, but again, if you take a look at what he's up to in majors, he's never shown up to the party. I don't think he's had a top 10 in a major yet. So there's a first time for everything, but at this kind of ownership, if there's a glaring weakness or a glaring deficiency in someone's stat profile for me, I'm going to use that for a reason to get out. And Hatton on bent grass greens from 5 to 15 feet is actually very poor. And, we're going to see a lot more of those kind of length putts this week from scrambling versus his actual length putts that you'll see on a birdie fest, where you're going to be making them from much further away, where his strength lies on these greens. We saw him do that. He lost on the bent greens at the Byron Nelson in 3 or 4 rounds last week. He made a few big bombs in, I think, round 3 to kind of salvage his putting, but I think he's going to have a tough time gaining strokes putting this week again. You're on mute, bud. We got Johnny in a hotel room.
Well, hotel room and 70 golf tabs open. Nothing wrong on Fleetwood's supposed 62 at Sleepy Hollow, as he comes in with good approach form, at least.
Yeah, I love Fleetwood this week, and that continues with my kind of European theme. Those guys, Fleetwood's been on a tear as well. Just talking about Shane Lowry here, I don't understand the lack of love for him this week. I know he's had his ups and his downs, but I'm seeing right around 8 to 9% ownership, and I always love to play him on these long, difficult courses, especially, up here in New York is very similar weather to, what he saw, in Ireland. And, I just think his putter has let him down a lot. But again, Oak Hill is such a complete tee to green test that I think it's going to kind of, bring his ball striking out to the forefront. And, he hits it far enough. He's one of the top 8 iron players in this field from, 175 plus. He's got a pretty impressive resume when we're talking about kind of these bent grass greens, long, tough. I kind of run that model this week for, who plays the best on courses that are long and tough with narrow fairways. And, he's had, really good performances in the past, places like Bethpage. So I expect him to be a factor this week for sure. But yeah, him and Fleetwood are kind of my main 2 guys in this range. I think Sam Burns is interesting because his ownership is so low right now, but he's a guy for me that he still hasn't shown me enough in majors for me to consider him. But there's definitely, if you want to play some leverage down here, him and Thigala, at 8,100 are interesting. But for right now, I'm out on those 2 guys.
Getting into the 7Ks, there are a lot of options. And if you're building lineups, obviously with Scheffler and Rahm, you have to remind yourself that you need to be unique around this range because it's already the same idea that everyone else is using to build their lineups. So much so that I'm thinking about leaving quite a bit of salary on the table this week if I come in with 4 7K players. But it starts the top 7-9 with always in the 7K range, Corey Connors and majors, Joaquin Niemann at 7-8, Adam Scott playing off his ass right now the last month at 7-8 as well. Keegan Bradley, 7-7. Justin Rose, who leads this field in putting on bent grass greens the last 3 years at 7-7. Patrick Reed, who I know, Ron, you always like to talk about his short game, especially when it comes to majors in a tournament where we think short game is going to be of the utmost importance for this one. And then Ricky Fowler, I also expect to get a little bit of excitement here at 7-6 too. And Ron, you mentioned at the very top of the show, a potential winner and Taylor Gooch at 7,600. So have at it.
Yeah. So for me, this is the range where you are seeing some guys creep up in ownership. And I think personally, this is where I'm going to kind of try to pivot more. I see, guys like Joaquin Niemann coming in at 12%. And I think he is a guy who, just looking at it, it does seem like this is a place that he would play very well, similar to Riviera where he won, just very good off the tee, very consistent on bent grass greens. That's his favorite putting surface. And he also has, kind of shown some signs of life, on the LIV tour. Of course, it's so hard to judge, when you don't have strokes gain data on that tour, just, how's he doing in different areas of his game. But yeah, like you said, Corey Connors, coming in at 7% right now, he's a definite pivot for me. Canadian, used to this kind of chilly weather, these conditions. He's, kind of a little surprising how he played at the Masters, missing the cut where he always had played so well there. But I'm not going to let that stop me from, staying away from him. His ball striking. And again, this week, maybe I disagree a little with Byron on that, but I think it's just going to be so important to, if you're hitting fairways and you're hitting greens, okay, even if you got a 40-foot putt for birdie, just giving yourself a chance to 2-putt for par, I think is going to be so important. And that's kind of what Corey Connors does best. Obviously not the best putter in the world, but he has shown signs on bent grass greens. So that's something I'm looking at as well. You have kind of going down here, Justin Rose and Ricky Fowler both creeping up in ownership. And so I'm going to go right below them. Actually, Reed and Gooch are just the same price as Fowler, but 7,600 each, both coming in around 8%. Patrick Reed just continues to do it major after major. And so I think, these 2 guys especially, just kind of play with a chip on their shoulder, especially for me, Taylor Gooch, who, we had all the drama last week about, not getting his exemption to get into the U.S. Open. And so, I think he especially is going to be really motivated to make a run for the top of the leaderboard this week. And again, he just won consecutive LIV events last month. And so he's bringing in pretty good form to this week. And again, kind of like a junior Schauffele, he's very strong in every area of his bag, and so I think, whether he's going to win or not, probably not. But I would not be surprised at all if he, comes in and finishes with the top 10.
Byron, what about you? And maybe you delve into some of the ownership in this range as well, since that's really what's going to be most important here.
Yeah, Wyndham Clark and Ricky Fowler are sitting at like 15, 16 a pop. And
Gosh,
it makes
Wyndham
a lot of
Clark
sense.
looks so good too. It's so annoying.
I know. It's like, why did they price him there? The guy just won a tournament and an elevated event. Now he's $7,500, less than Patrick Reed. So it's a nightmare. You're going to have to figure out what you're doing. But there's guys like an Abraham Answer, who is not a long bomber, really good on bend putting greens. And so if I'm going to pick a guy that's accurate off the tee, he needs to be like hyper accurate. I said that a million times on my podcast, but hyper accuracy is going to be so beneficial because a 25-yard longer approach shot from the fairway, I think, is probably position A versus 25 yards closer in this rough. From like, call it 175 to 200. If you're 200 yards in the fairway, I think a lot of these professional golfers may take that position over 175 yards in the rough. I might be wrong, but just with how thick this rough is and how small these greens are and with the danger around the greens, I think the most control you can get on the golf ball from the fairway is essential this week. So if you can hit a lot of fairways, kind of like Abraham Answer can do, he made the cut at the Masters and he's going to be like 2% owned. No one cares about him. And I think he's going to be sexy. Taylor Gooch, I have a rebuttal there. I think he does play with a chip on his shoulder, but when there's no pressure, he tends to excel. Goes and wins these 2 tournaments back-to-back, 62-62, goes to his home state of Tulsa, Oklahoma, or whatever, finishes whatever he finished at the LIV event, 36th in a LIV event. So when he went to his home state, when the pressure was on, when he had to perform in front of his home crowd, 36th. He has to now, I think, play really well to get his US Open ticket, and I think that's a secondary part of pressure that he's going to deal with. You've seen Taylor Gooch in the mix in PGA Tour events and just melt down. So I'm out. I don't mind him. I don't want him this week. I do like guys like Emiliano Grillo, Brendan Todd, Christian Bezuidenhout. Those are guys that I'm going to be leaning on. I think this range is the range I want to get 2% ownership, 1% ownership on my guys.
So let me get this straight. So you're not on Gooch, but you're on Griot because Griot knows how to close events. Byron?
No, I'm not. Grillo is what? 2% owned. Gooch is pushing double digits. And I know what you're going to be getting from Grillo. You're going to get a ball striking masterclass, and then I'm going to lose my mind when he's messing up around the green. So at least I only have to play Grillo to like 5-10% of my lineups versus Gooch having to be in a fifth of them. So that's my difference there. And I just think Gooch is just a mental midget in general. So I've got a very big bias against him.
As we creep into the lower 7Ks, Ron, one good play and one bad play. Bad play first. I'm just saying that if we talk about accuracy off the tee, I think Bryson DeChambeau comes into play. Now, accuracy when approaching the greens may be a little different. He's also a streaky putter, but I do think he's still maybe a good 1% play here because he's not going to be rostered whatsoever. I'll probably jam him into some large field entries. And then I don't know what you have for his ownership. I think it's getting steamed the more and more we go on, even though I've heard some contrarian thoughts, especially for the higher stakes tournaments. But Russell Henley's obviously just an amazing play. Like just one of my overall favorite plays at any price range. For recency, over the last month, 4 consecutive T20s, including that T4 at the Masters, not to mention that 7th among this field in proximity to the hole from the rough over the last 36 rounds. Over the last 6 months, 14th in this field in good drive percentage. So kind of coming in with it all together right now. I don't know his win equity, but honestly, like T10, T20 finish, like, of course, I think he can do that. So I also really like Henley in this range.
Yeah, so there's parts of this that's kind of a dead range to me. I do like Bryson. I never thought I would say that ever again, really, on the track that he was on. But just seeing him in shape, seeing him, seemingly happy.
He looks good, by the way.
He does look good. Yeah.
How many pounds is it that he's dropped?
I didn't see the exact amount, but he looks actually slender. Like
it's athletic frame now.
Yeah.
It's not like the bulky mass he was carrying around. Yeah, I love Bryson.
And he just, again, going back to the LIV results, so unreliable, which is why I don't put anything into Gooch finishing 36. But yeah, Bryson, looked good, even though I'll put a little bit into it. Finished 7th at Tulsa last week. And so, I just think, if we're talking about, people have talked about this all week, the whole bomb and gouge strategy at Winged Foot, how he won and he does that. Will that play here? That remains to be seen. Mm-hmm. But just at 7,400, I think the upside is tremendous. And so, he didn't look all that bad at the Masters either. He didn't make the cut, but he showed flashes of brilliance during those 2 rounds. And so I think he's well worth taking a jump here. For me, Gary Woodland, I hate, like we talked about earlier, just seeing that ownership at 15%, because I just think this is such a perfect week for him. Just his inability with the putter drives people crazy, but his ball striking is literally like the 2nd best in the entire field. And when we get into these tough US Open, PGA Championship courses, he's the 9th best player in this field over the last 6 years. So, he brings it during these events, and I just think he's a great play. And so kind of deciding, if the field is 15%, do I go 25 or do I actually fade him? So he'll be painful if I have to fade him, but we'll kind of see how that plays out tonight. But for me, a guy that I love that's kind of really going under the radar, maybe not as much as some people think, but right around 9%, Siwoo Kim. I just think his play, of course, he finished runner-up last week, has not had the best success at these kind of strong field events. But again, I think he has the upside. I think he has made a lot of progress with his consistency over the past year. And so, again, looking for upside here once we get into this low 7K, 6K range. So, again, 7,100, I love him. And if Keith Mitchell, again, one of the best players off the tee in the world, leads the tour in total driving still. His approach game has been really bad lately. But, again, if he can, again, not the course you're going to try to figure stuff out, but I just think, again, at 7,100, he does give you some upside at that price.
Yeah. I'll agree with you on Gary Woodland, Ron. You know what I like about his short game at majors? He's the same thing as Colin Morikawa. One of the worst putters baseline-wise, get into these major events, he jumps drastically, like 60 spots in putting. So a lot to like on the putting side. We saw him right at the top of the leaderboard at the Masters, right? I mean, so he was, and it was because of his short game that he was up there. So there's a lot to go off of there. I don't mind him at all. I mentioned Brendan Todd. He's one of these guys that's very, very accurate off the tee and a really good short game. Solid long iron play from the fairway. I don't care about the rough for him because he's going to be in the fairway most of the time. And then it wouldn't be a podcast on BetSperts without mentioning a $7,000 Seamus Power. Talk about major pedigree. This guy's only played 5 majors in his career. He's made 4 cuts in them, and 2 of them have been a T12 and a T9, baby. Let's go. I've got a 190-1 outright bet on Seamus Powers. Got a top 40 bet on him at like plus 230 or something, 240. So he's up there. He's a grinder. This kind of weather is Irish to the max. Sign me up for him. And then Chris Kirk as well. Just a very similar kind of skill set, just really tidy around the greens, just consistent, just plods along, So he does some good stuff. They both got really good major strokes gained. And I love what you can get there.
Kirk, I think, is one of the sneakier flat 7K plays, like just a terrific value, honestly, that I'm also trying to find ways to put him in. And like Ron mentioned, Patrick Reed, like I mentioned, Bryson, the 7K range is that's where I'm going to get my edge. That's where I'm just treating it to literally pivot our faces off. And so that's why we mentioned those plays, because they're around the Russell Henleys and the Justin Roses and the Wyndham Clarks of the world, just trying to find some kind of edge playing Rahm or Scheffler. As we go on to the 6Ks, lots of other names to get to here, especially at the top with Aaron Wise at 6'9", Big Bobby McIntyre 6'9". We only get to talk about him at majors now. Tom Hoagie, we spend a lot of time on, but his play around the green, at least over the last month, has been an absolute mess. So maybe 6'9" does warrant him. But I want to lead off really quick, Ron, because Clinton in the chat also asks about Moronk at 6,700. Any thoughts there?
Oh, that's interesting because he was going to be the first guy I talked about. So
there you go.
Here's a guy who, he's got some major experience under his belt. Played at the Masters. So young guy, kind of really rising to the top on the DP World Tour. Just won the Italian Open. And when you look at his, his event log, he Played at the Arnold Palmer, had a little bit of a struggle there. 14th at the Honda, 45th at the Genesis. So kind of getting used to playing more on tour here in the States. But I think he kind of gives you just so much upside just off the tee. He's very long. His approach game is streaky, kind of comes and goes, but his short game is just stellar. Very good touch around the greens. And so, like we always talk about here, you're looking for, either course history, which you're not going to get this week because, again, it's a brand new course for all these guys. So kind of relying on just pure upside here. And so I think at 6,700, you combine that plus the fact that I think he is a course fit, and Meronk is definitely a guy who I love this week.
Byron, before Ron steals some others in the 6K range, go ahead and get us started.
Matt Kuchar, boys. He's back. One of the best bunker scramblers of our time. I mean, the guy is 25% above tour average. This is PGA Tour professionals that he's 50% better at a specific skill set than the average tour player. So got to appreciate that. He's a really good around the green player. The closer the scores are to par, you play Matt Kuchar. I think he's going to be grinding. He's accurate off the tee. The iron play is crap, but the rest of his game is really, really good at making pars, and that's what you need to do here. Dean Burmester's the opposite. Tons of distance off the tee, real scrappy. The Stingers just won LIV Tulsa, so he's riding high and played really well on Sunday. So we'll take a shot with him. Got a massive amount of distance there. Mackenzie Hughes from the Byron Nelson kind of popped a little bit. He's probably not going to be owned at all. He's $6,800, real scrappy. You've seen him pop up at majors many, many times. Brian Harman, Daigle.
Still in my terrible play.
Yes, I have to. It's not a terrible play. It's a good play this week. I think, off the tee, he's so accurate. He's fifth in the field in accuracy. Really good around the greens when it comes to, some bunker play there from Harman. Really tidy. Fourth in bogey avoidance. He's just doing his thing, and I like his chances this week. And then Steven Yeager. I got a lot of 6K guys. Steven Yeager, $6,700. He just entered the field late, so a lot of people that put out content prior to this, he's not going to have made it in there. Padraig Harrington, major champion, length off the tee, scrambler. And then Joel Damon, Brendan Steele, Hayden Buckley. Three guys at $6,600. They are kind of really good drivers of the golf ball. Joel, particularly accurate. And I think he's kind of fits that mold. And then we're going to scoot all the way down here to Ches Reavie at $6,300. The fourth most accurate player in the field off the tee. And then green in regulation rates from over 150 yards. He's fourth in this field. So it's a smallish sample size with Ches. He doesn't play too many times, but he dominates in majors, and he's $6,300. And I like what he can get up to on the ball striking side of things.
Ron also has a free column on the site going over the historical stroke gains in strong field events the last 4 years, including majors, and Harman is top 20 in terms of stroke gains on average among strong fields. So lots of reason, for better or worse, for me to play Brian Harman at low ownership. Ron, what else do you have for us in the 6K range?
Yeah, so Harman is one of the kind of the quote unquote bigger names down here that has had a lot of success in the past. So, I don't think you can go wrong with him at all. And he, again, after a struggle recently, he's kind of lately come around a little bit. So do like that play. This is just this upper 6K range is like, there's a lot of guys who are intriguing, but it's just, there's so many negatives around almost all these guys that it's really hard to pull the trigger or, try to be overweight on any of them. Like Tom Hoagie, like me and Byron talk about, like he's got this elite iron play, but it's just like he can go so cold on the greens, and his short game is not probably where it should be, especially at a course like this that you kind of just dread what's going to happen when he gets in a bunker. And so, he's someone I'm still deciding on. You have Aaron Wise, who, again, if he's mentally doing better, which, last week, made the cut at the Byron Nelson in his return, has elite talent and upside to kind of always does have success in these strong field events. And so he's a guy who I'm still kind of deciding on. But again, if you're looking for upside, kind of going down here, there's a lot of interesting names. Francesco Molinari kind of popped for me with kind of 175 plus yards, really good from the rough. He's really trying hard to get on that Ryder Cup team for Europe. And so, I think at 6,800, I think he's a decent play. if I told you that there was a guy here who has 4 top 6s in this calendar year, okay, 4 top 6s, any guesses on who that is?
Is it Peter Rabbit, Patrick Rogers?
It is not. It is a guy probably most people who play haven't heard of because he doesn't play much. Plays in some of these majors, but he is a DP World Tour guy, Thorbjorn Olesen, who actually has played in 2 PGA championships and finished top 30 in both of them.
I feel like the last time we discussed him in a PGA field, you also talked about him.
Yeah, I can't remember that far back, Daigle, but yeah, no, he's a guy who, when you look at, he just last week, he finished 3rd at the Soudal Open, and so, I know people will say, oh, these are lesser field events, the competition's not as tough, but he's a guy who's a veteran. He's played plenty of these tough courses before. He's played plenty of majors here in the States. And he's a guy who is long off the tee, can be erratic at times. But again, we're talking 6,500. If you're trying to, play, a Scheffler and a Cantlay together in the same lineup, you're going to have to dig down here. And, again, he's a guy who has experience. He has upside. And so he is probably my favorite play kind of in this. Honestly, probably as low as I'll go at 6,500. As
always, we'd like to end with the DFS question surrounding the big picture theory. And I think this week it is the fact that most people will be playing one of Scheffler or Rahm. And thus, I want to get the 2 golfers you 2 will be overweight on from the 8K range down, starting with you, Byron.
Seamus Power. I'll play that guy till my eyes fall out, and then
play the record of you just re-saying that.
Yeah, just have a voice button for me there, and then at this price range, I think I'm gonna. Gosh darn it, I'll have to be overweight on Matt Kuchar. I think he's at 5%, but I really like him at $6,900. That's really affordable, and he's pretty safe, I think.
I like a lot, so it's tough, Ron, but I think I am going to go Bryson, Henley, and I'll throw in Harmon. I'll give you all the ugly answers.
You said 8K.
I'm on board with Harmon this week, by the way, which I'm not laughing at him. I'm laughing with us.
I know. It's still bad, though. Yeah. Doesn't make it good that we're on him. 8K down.
8K down. So if we're going to 8K, then I'm definitely on Tommy Fleetwood. Just his recent, approach play and just how good he plays in these type of conditions. I just think everything kind of fits him this week. I'm going to play Taylor Gooch even more now, just to spite Byron. So, that's going to be really interesting when we come back next week to see what ends up happening in that situation. But yeah, if I had to choose one more, probably Patrick Reed would be my other guy. I just think his just kind of his history in these major events is so good around the green. Like literally every model I run, whether it's, when I look for tough bunkers, when I look for, tough scrambling positions around the green, short lies, tight lies, I mean, he comes out number 1 in just about every model around the green. So even if he's not, and he's not a long hitter and he's not accurate at times, but he just has the ability to kind of scramble and make up for everything. So in a week like this where, 5 under par could be the winning score, I think Patrick Reed is a great play at 7,600.
Ron,
and Byron,
$1 for Seamus Power over Taylor Gooch, straight up.
Did you say $1?
$10, $1, whatever, something on the line.
All right, $10. Let's do it.
Okay, $10. Let's go.
Look at you, dollar shaming, Ron. And then, as always, Byron, a bet that we will end on. Your favorite bet for the week.
Patrick Cantlay, even money, top 20.
It's everything I talked about, Ron, so I'll just shove it all into a parlay on FanDuel together at plus 185 last I looked. Fitzpatrick and Russell Henley, T40.
Nice. I think Shane Lowry plus 135 for a T40 is stealing. Even Gary Woodland is plus 140 for a top 40. So I think both of those are on FanDuel. Don't know if they're still available, but I think both of those guys are really solid plays at that number.
Ron, tell everyone what else you have coming out this evening, since you are now the TV superstar as well.
No, and I don't even use under par. I use strokes gained. Everybody knows that, but nevertheless, yeah, no, we've got another office hours. We're going to start doing that every week, where me and Ryan and Andy will be in the Discord at 4:30 Eastern, kind of answering any questions, whether it's DFS betting, strategy, weather, which again looks like tomorrow is going to be a pretty good day, except for the cold in the morning. But little bad weather coming on the weekend. So, but yeah, we got that, and then we got some ownership will be posted on Betsbridge Golf tonight, along with a few other things.
And of course, those office hours to reach the Discord, see everything. Both Ron, myself, Andy, Noonan have all written for bets and DFS. Can still be accessed for $19.99 monthly sub. And honestly, right now, if you get it, remember, the next major is June 15th. So you're getting 2 majors for the price of 1, essentially. Yeah. Byron, what else do you have coming up for everyone at Back9Bets and Rotoballer?
Yep, that's the spot. Rotoballer.com, got all my crap out there. And Back9Bets, I've got the Rainmaker show. I got my hour-and-a-half long, went through all of these names that I rattled off earlier in the 6K range. So I went through all of those, kind of took my time, and had a good time on my show. So Back9Bets was a fun evening last night.
A very big week. Good luck, everyone. And remember, be a little bit kinder once required. We'll see you next time.